Hey guys, tonight we begin in the thick morning mist of a Han village where your bare feet squish into cold clay. Your day as a potter is just beginning. You wake before the sun as you always do, with the scent of wood smoke clinging to the damp air and the faint hiss of the river nearby, slipping between houses made of packed earth and timber. You rub your eyes and swing your legs from the sleeping platform to the floor, which is chilly and unforgiving. Outside, roosters are already shouting declarations of war on the silence, and smoke begins to curl from the neighbors' cooking fires. Your tunic is scratchy but warm. You tie it at the waist with practiced hands, then step out into the courtyard where the clay pit waits just beyond the garden. The clay is stubborn this morning, half frozen and sticky, and as you kneel beside it, scooping hunks into a woven basket, you can't help but wonder, not for the first time, why fate gave you dirt as your destiny. Not silk. The clay is stubborn this morning, half frozen and sticky, and as you kneel beside it, scooping hunks into a woven basket, you can't help but wonder, not for the first time, why fate gave you dirt as your destiny. Not silk, not scrolls, dirt. A toad blinks at you from the mud wall. It's too early even for jokes. You trudge toward the workshop with your basket, the weight pulling against your hip. Your toes are caked in red-brown sludge already, and the sun isn't even up yet. You pass the neighbor's goat who stares at you with the judging eyes of a minor official. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is there. I always love seeing where our sleepy little caravan travels. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach the workshop door. It's a simple space, an open-walled shed with a slanted thatch roof and a half-circle kiln behind it. The ground is hard-packed earth speckled with flecks of old glazes and broken shards, pottery ghosts of mistakes past. You set down your basket with a grunt and stretch your back until it pops. Then you check the kiln, still radiating the warm breath of yesterday's fire. You run your hand near it, careful not to touch the heat, still dances just above the bricks like a warning spirit. The sun starts its slow crawl over the hills, gilding the fog in molten gold. You hear someone approach. Footsteps. You don't need to look up to know it's old Master G. His joints click like loose hinges as he walks, and his breathing sounds like someone arguing with a reed flute. You're late, he rasps, even though you clearly aren't. You bow slightly. Good morning, Master. He grunts. We'll see. You resist the urge to roll your eyes. You didn't yesterday. I tripped on a stone and nearly created abstract sculpture. You smile. Would have been ahead of your time, Master. Art critics don't buy bowls. He sniffs, but a tiny smirk betrays him. The first rays of sun spill across your wheel. You grab the wooden seat, settle in, and press your foot to the treadle. The wheel begins its hypnotic spin. A lump of clay slaps the center off center, of course, and you immediately start correcting. Hands, damp fingers, steady you press, guide shape. The rhythm begins to carry you. A bowl begins to form, wobbling into symmetry, the clay rising under your palms like it's breathing with you. There's something deeply human about this moment, fighting gravity, time, and your own impatience to make something useful and beautiful. Historians still argue whether Han pottery was more technically impressive than what came before, but there's no debating the feeling of this moment. You're not just shaping clay. You're shaping the hours of your life. The village bell rings once time for the communal meal, but not yet. You smooth the rim of your bowl with a damp cloth pinching ever so slightly. That extra touch. Maybe it will survive the fire, maybe not. A rooster crows again very dramatically as if he were announcing your greatness to the empire or just trying to get attention. Roosters are like that. Still, you can't help but feel proud. One bowl down, a few dozen more to go before the next kiln loading. Your palms are already etched with the day's story, and it's only just begun. You don't get applause for making one good bowl. In fact, you don't get applause for anything in your profession unless someone smashes a pot in front of you, which is technically a critique. The wheel is quiet now, still spinning slightly, slowing like a lazy coin on a table. You set the bowl aside on a drying shelf, joining a few others made earlier in the week. The wheel is quiet now, still spinning slightly, slowing like a lazy coin on a table. You set the bowl aside on a drying shelf, joining a few others made earlier in the week. Their forms are beginning to harden in the warm breeze that sneaks through the slats in the wall. You pause to inspect them, some bottoms, a little thick one lip, slightly slanted another, with a faint fingerprint left too boldly. It'll fire out, or it won't. The kiln is judge and jury. You just plead your case with your hands. Next comes preparing your workstation. You sweep away yesterday's dust with a palm broom, then reach for your most beloved tools, a bamboo rib for smoothing, a bone needle for trimming, and the carved stick Xi once claimed came from a tree struck by lightning, which he insists makes your lines more dramatic. You think he might have hit it with a hammer himself. He appears behind you just as you think it. That tree saved my marriage, he says cryptically, then walks away. You don't ask. You've learned. The workshop hums with slow rhythm. Another apprentice arrives, Leon, still yawning, clutching a half-eaten rice ball. She grunts a greeting. You grunt back. That's the workshop language before second meal. You glance around at the familiar sights, the wide trough of wet clay soaking in water, the shelf of glazes, each sealed in jars and labeled in G's impossible handwriting, a line of drying bowls, some good, some character building, and in the center of it all, your wheel, slightly cracked, a bit uneven, but yours. You repaired the treadle strap with woven hemp last season. It creaks like an old boat, but still turns true. That wheel is more consistent than some people you know. Time to prepare another batch. The clay needs kneading, wedge it like dough over and over to push out air bubbles. If you skip this step, your bowl could explode in the kiln. Not crack, explode. Once a piece shot across the kiln like a missile and took out a week's worth of teacups. It always does. Clay is like a stubborn uncle. It pretends not to hear you at first, but eventually comes around. As you work, you notice something odd, a piece of straw embedded in the lump. You pull it out, toss it aside, then another and another. Your brow furrows. This batch isn't pure riverbank clay. It's been mixed with old hay. Either someone's trying a new blend or someone's trying to cut corners. You make a note to speak with Leon gently, because she once threw a ladle at you when you corrected her trimming technique. Outside, the village is beginning to wake fully. You hear the distant thump of laundry against stones, the shriek of a child denied another rice cake, and a rooster having a loud existential crisis for the third time. Above it all, the faint chime of the temple bell. Time marches. You return to the wheel with fresh clay, this time a better blend. You center it on the wheel, letting it squish satisfyingly under your palms. Time marches. You return to the wheel with fresh clay, this time a better blend. You center it on the wheel, letting it squish satisfyingly under your palms. The foot treadle squeaks in rhythm and the world narrows to just your fingertips in the slow dance of earth becoming vessel. There's something strange about this process, how messy hands can create such elegance. You press in at the sides, draw the walls upward, thinning shaping. A cylinder becomes a curve becomes a cup. That's the trick, knowing when to stop. Push too far and the whole thing slouches over like a sleepy drunk. You stop in time, barely. The rim has a slight flare, maybe that's intentional. You tilt your head considering. G's voice echoes in your mind. A good bowl listens. A great bowl speaks. You're not entirely sure what that means, but this one's whispering something. You lift it carefully and set it beside the others. The morning's batch is coming together, a family of imperfect shapes, each with its own lean bulge or surprising elegance. They're like siblings at a reunion, obviously related but very different opinions on how wide a base should be. Leanne approaches. You're ahead of schedule, she notes, eyebrow raised, or you're behind you, counter smirking. She snorts and takes her seat at her own wheel. The two of you work in parallel now, the sound of foot treadles and sloshing water, forming a sort of low, earthy music. You find the rhythm comforting. In this quiet duet, the day passes not in hours, but in bowls. The sun has risen higher. Light dapples through the bamboo slats, casting shifting patterns across your workspace. You're sweating now, hands stained, arms sore, but your shelf is full. And just in time. G calls out from the other side of the shed. Time to trim and sign, or it's your name on the chamber pot again. You wince. He would do that. Not fancy, but yours. Later, when someone drinks tea or ladles soup, they'll feel that swirl under their fingers. A little ghost of you. It's noon. The fire's still low. The bowls are trimmed. And there's rice waiting somewhere. Not bad for a morning in the life of a Han Dynasty potter. Master G is already chewing by the time you arrive for lunch. He's seated on a low stool in the courtyard beneath the jujube tree, a wooden bowl of rice in one hand and a pickled plum held up like a threat in the other. You nod in greeting and take your usual spot across from him, the packed earth cool beneath you. A breeze stirs the leaves overhead, sending a few dry ones fluttering down like lazy butterflies. Leanne joins with her own bowl flopping onto the ground with the exhausted grace of someone who's been alive far too long for their age. She mutters something about sore wrists and overworked elbows, then proceeds to inhale half her rice before you can even lift your chopsticks. Master G chews thoughtfully, watching the both of you like an imperial inspector watches tax records. You're overworking the rims again, he says without looking up. You pause. Which bowl? All of them. Maybe that's a style now, you say, trying to be cheeky. Styles are for nobles and madmen. You're neither. He pops the plum into his mouth like a period at the end of a judgmental sentence. You've known G for years now, though no one really knows how old he is. Some say he served in the early years of Emperor Wu's reign. Others whisper that he was once a soldier who lost a bet with a ghost and became a potter to pay off the debt. You're not sure which version is more believable. You first met him as a scrappy teenager covered in dust and confidence. He took one look at your first lopsided bowl and said, "You're bad, but not hopeless. Let's make something dangerous out of you." Dangerous pottery, a goal to live by. The years since have been a blur of heat, ash-wet clay, and long hours spent trying to impress a man who once told a visiting noble that his best work was made while slightly hungover. G isn't the warmest teacher. His praise is rarer than moonlight in a storm, But when it comes, it lodges somewhere deep inside your ribs like a secret ember. One time, after you saved a collapsing batch of amphorae by inventively propping them up with a broom handle in prayer, he said, "Not bad. Try not to die before you teach someone else." That's practically love in G's language. After lunch, he shuffles over to the workshop's edge and sits with his back to a sun-warmed wall. His hands, once nimble, now shake a little when he lifts anything too delicate. But the eye, his potter's eye, hasn't dimmed. You know when he's watching. You can feel it like a kiln's heat pressing your shoulders straighter. He clears his throat. "Do you know why we sign the base of every pot you shrug? So people know who to blame." He actually chuckles at that. Not bad. But no, it's so the gods can return your name when they're done drinking from it. You blink. That's odd. Everything sacred is odd. He mutters, then dozes off mid-sentence. He does that more often these days. You turn to your shelf and pull down the first bowl from the morning batch. It's not bad. The curve is smooth. The lip, despite G's claims, isn't overworked. You gently wrap it in linen and place it into the waiting crate, marked for market, possibly for tribute. If the magistrate's in a mood, G snores lightly behind you. Leon is already back at her wheel, humming something completely off-key. The sunlight is growing stronger now, painting the earth in warm, honeyed tones. You glance down at your hands, stained, calloused, nicked in at least 3 places. Hands that have thrown thousands of bowls, jars, cups, lids, and the occasional impromptu ashtray when things go wrong. Historians still argue whether Han Dynasty pottery was more about utility or aesthetics. You suspect it was both. No emperor wants an ugly teacup. No farmer wants a leaky rice jar. And you just want to make something that lasts longer than you do. G stirs again. Remember the teapot with the dragon handle? You blink. The one that exploded. He nods solemnly. Funeral firework. Impressive. That's the highest compliment you've ever gotten from him. The sun slips a little lower. A chicken wanders into the courtyard, pecking curiously at a stray shard of broken pottery. You wave it off. It stares you down unimpressed. Chickens and potters share a certain mutual disregard. G lifts his head slowly. We'll fire tomorrow. Load in the morning. Let the bowls breathe tonight. You nod already, mentally planning your kiln layout. Some potters swear by symmetrical stacking, others by chaotic layering. You follow what G calls the method of anxious precision, a balance of control and surrender. He adds, and bring the good glaze, the green one, the one that smells like sour peaches. You wrinkle your nose. That stuff, it's cursed. I like it. You sigh, knowing full well that glaze has both made and destroyed reputations. It's volatile, prone to cracking, bubbling, or turning unexpectedly glorious. Like most things in life, you begin mixing a batch while the light fades. G stays seated, humming a tune older than roads. His silhouette, framed by the kiln's smoke, looks almost mythic in the late-day haze. Somewhere in the distance, the temple bell rings again. Evening. You wipe your hands on your tunic and glance at the shelf. Another day's work done. Another step in a life made of mud and fire. You wonder, as you often do, what your pots will say about you long after your name is dust. There's a certain thrill in shaping something from nothing. The 4th bowl of the afternoon spins beneath your fingers, wobbling like it's had too much rice wine. You frown, slow the treadle, and center the clay again with gentle pressure. The trick is to listen, to feel the clay shift, to catch the way it leans left or right, like it's trying to tell you a secret. Too much force and it rebels. too little and it laughs at you splaying into a puddle. Xi watches silently from the shade. He doesn't need to speak anymore. His eyebrows are expressive enough. You can tell when he thinks your work is promising or when it resembles a chamber pot with delusions of grandeur. You press in, carefully shaping the base. The walls rise obediently this time. Your arms ache, but it's a good ache earned. You smooth the sides with the bamboo rib, your motions becoming almost meditative. In this moment, there's nothing but the spin, the wet hiss of clay, and the sun warming the side of your face. You glance over at Lian. She's hunched over her own wheel tongue, sticking slightly out in concentration, working on a tall jar with a narrow neck. Ambitious, risky. You admire that. It might collapse, it might become the piece everyone talks about in the next festival. That's pottery humble until it's heroic. By now the workshop smells like earth and wood smoke with a hint of iron from the drying glaze buckets. You stretch your back, blinking at the sunlight slanting through the rafters. Another few hours and it'll be dark. Time moves strangely when your hands are in the clay, slow and fast all at once. The bowl is finished. You cradle it like a sleeping kitten, then slide it onto the drying shelf beside its siblings. You eye them, all trying not to play favorites. That one on the left, the slightly flared one, it might just be the best of the batch. Or the first to shatter. Hard to say. You remember your first real bowl? The one that didn't fall apart on the wheel. G had grunted and said, "You made something. It's terrible, but it's a thing." You'd been so proud you gave it to your mother. She'd used it to store pickled radishes until it cracked, then kept it anyway to store needles. She still has it. That ugly little bowl outlived a dynasty. Historians still argue whether pottery from this period reflects innovation or tradition. The truth is, every potter invents their own balance. You're not trying to match a blueprint. You're trying to solve a puzzle one lump at a time. You pull another hunk of clay from the tub, slap it onto the wheel. Center, wet hands, spin. The process is the same, but every time the result is different. Like raising children from the same house who all decide to be dramatically different types of spoon. Suddenly, G's voice cuts through the clatter of wheels. "Come here. You too, Lian." You glance at each other, eyebrows raised, then join him near the kiln. He's standing beside a large leather-bound scroll case. "This came while you were playing with mud," he says, handing it to you. You unroll the parchment, careful not to tear it. It's a trade order from the next province. Someone's requesting 20 rice jars and a dozen tea bowls with your studio's mark. The handwriting is formal. The wax seal is from a mid-level administrator. Not noble, but close. Lian whistles. "That's a lot of pots." You nod, and not a lot of time. G grunts. "Better get to it then. And don't let your artistry make them late." You grin. This is the good part, the pressure, the deadline, the knowledge that your work is going somewhere, that it might be part of someone's wedding gift or daily tea ritual. You picture a scholar in silk robes sipping from your bowl, not knowing your name, but knowing the way the lip curves just right against their mouth. Back at your wheel, you throw faster now, not sloppier, just with more rhythm. There's a tempo to it, like drumming. Each shape rises from the wheel with a bit more confidence, a bit more purpose. You're no longer shaping clay, you're fulfilling a role meeting a need, part of the pulse of the Han economy. Pottery is not just art, it's commerce. It's food storage ritual, offering family heirloom, even burial good. You've made bowls that will sit under tables and bowls that will sit under earth. One time Xi showed you a jar dug up from an old grave near the Yellow River. "Still sealed," he said proudly. "Still ugly, too." You asked who made it. Someone like us, he replied. Someone long dead who never thought they'd last this long. The sun is low now. Shadows stretch across the workshop floor. You finish the final bowl, hands stiff, shoulders tight. You lift it from the wheel, admiring the clean lines, the weight, the feel of something well made. You set it down and wash your hands in the basin by the doorway. The water is cold. The clay slips away, but it never fully leaves. There's always a little in your nails and the creases of your skin, a mark, like your bowl's useful, a bit worn, but enduring. Outside, G is snoring again. Inside your shelf holds tomorrow's promise, and you're tired, proud, and just a little bit smug about that one bowl with the flared rim. Morning in the Han Dynasty doesn't begin with birdsong. It begins with smoke thick and lazy curling from the kiln chimney before your eyes are even open. You yawn so wide your jaw clicks, drag your hands down your face, and stumble toward the workshop like a zombie in hemp sandals. Leon's already there, arms covered in clay, up to her elbows. She waves without turning. Z says we're loading the kiln before second bell. You squint at the sun's position. That's soon, very. You groan. It's kiln day. Now, kiln day isn't glamorous. It's not artistic. It's sweaty, dirty, risky work that turns your hard-earned pottery into either masterpieces or mosaic tiles. No one knows exactly what happens inside the kiln once the door is sealed and the fire begins to roar. It's like sending your children off to a mysterious and potentially deadly boarding school. The dragon kiln sits at the rear of the workshop grounds, dug into the hill, its long tunnel-like shape sloping slightly upward. At first glance, it looks like a giant sleeping lizard, hence the name. Its belly is blackened, its mouth wide and ready for fire. The firing chamber is large enough to fit dozens of bowls, jars, cups, and questionable experiments, all balanced carefully so they don't collapse or fuse together like clay-conjoined twins. Master G is already crouched near the firebox, poking it like it personally offended him. Glaze shelf on the left, unglazed on the right. Remember what happened last time? Last time? Oh yes, the glaze shelf melted into the floor like candied tofu. That was unfortunate. You and Leon begin the slow, careful process of loading. You handle each piece like a baby bird made of glass. The shelves inside are stacked using clay risers and thin slabs forming layers, like a pastry of possibility and disaster. Some potters load haphazardly, but not you. You have a system-wide bases near the floor, narrow necks near the top, and always a lucky chicken feather tucked into the corner. Superstition. Absolutely. But you'd rather not tempt the kiln gods. Leon holds up one of your bowls, frowns, and turns it in the light. You went thin on the rim again. It's an aesthetic decision. It's going to warp. You wish. G throws a broken shard at both of you to remind you who's in charge. By mid-morning, the kiln is full. Each pot placed with care, each gap filled with smaller wares to make the most of the space. You place the last piece, a green glazed tea jar, right at the center. If it comes out right, it'll shimmer like jade. If it doesn't, well, you'll just say it was intentional. Jai seals the kiln mouth with bricks and clay slip, muttering something that might be a curse or a poem. Historians still argue whether hand potters followed a standardized kiln ritual or just made it up as they went along. G clearly falls into the latter category. Then the fire. The first wave is gentle, dry twigs and kindling, slowly building heat. You sit near the bellows, your foot resting on the wooden lever, rhythmically pumping air into the inferno's belly. The kiln begins to growl, then roar. Flames lick the air like they're hungry for your hopes. You feel it in your bones, that low vibrating heat that makes the hair on your arms stand up. The inside of the kiln is transforming now, reaching over 1,000 degrees Celsius. Clay becomes ceramic. Minerals dance. Glazes shift color like lizards in sunlight. Everything inside is changing irreversibly, and you can't touch any of it. You can only wait, which in your case means work. While G and Leon take shifts stoking the fire, you mix more glaze. Today's mix includes powdered feldspar rice husk ash and a pinch of something G refers to as the good stuff, though you're fairly certain it's just pond sediment. It smells like a crime scene. The glaze bucket bubbles gently in the sun. You stir it with a long bamboo rod, the liquid thick and chalky, the color somewhere between swamp and sorcery. The Han were known for their early experiments with celadon, those cool greenish hues that hint at jade without the price tag. Some say they were meant to mimic bronze, others believe it was just the happiest of glaze accidents. You paint a few test bowls with the new mixture, your brush strokes steady despite the sweat trickling down your back. You leave them out to dry, hoping they'll catch the next firing in a few days. Maybe this time, you'll finally get that soft ocean glass green that's eluded you for weeks. Leon wanders over, eyes red from the kiln smoke. Jai says it's your turn to keep the flame steady. He's gonna go yell at clouds or something. Understood. You settle beside the firebox. It radiates heat like a dragon exhaling. You feed it slowly, carefully, thin logs, then thicker ones. The fire crackles and snaps alive in a way that makes your skin prickle. You sit back on your heels, wipe your face with your sleeve, and stare into the heart of the kiln. You think about all the pots in there, your work, your worry, your week, condensed into fragile walls of earth. It's out of your hands now, well, almost. You still have to keep the fire burning evenly for another 6 hours. You sigh. This is why potters are always tired. You are a sleep-deprived, clay-dusted bundle of nerves, and the kiln doesn't care. The fire's been going for hours now, and your entire body hums from the heat. Your face feels like it could roast peanuts. Every few minutes you check the firebox, adjust the wood, and poke at the coals like a particularly stubborn snake. Sparks leap up and vanish into the darkening sky. Night is coming fast, swallowing the blue of the sky and replacing it with indigo. You can already hear the frogs starting their nocturnal opera from the nearby rice fields. They sound far too cheerful. Leon comes over carrying a bowl of millet porridge and thrusts it into your hands. Eat before you become part of the kiln wall. You nod gratefully. The porridge is bland hot and oddly comforting. You shovel it in with one hand while still minding the flames. This is the glamorous life-burned hands, soot-smudged cheeks, and midnight snacks under the stars. G's asleep, Leonad's plopping down beside you. Said something about fire spirits. Also said not to fall asleep unless we want ghost cracks. You blink. Ghost cracks. She shrugs. Probably just his way of keeping us awake. The kiln roars beside you like an angry beast being tamed. It's beautiful in a terrifying way, an alchemical crucible where earth becomes stone color blooms from nothing, and your pride is either forged or shattered. You both fall into a comfortable silence. Watching fire is hypnotic. It's almost meditative, like a low chant that tugs at your eyelids. But you can't sleep. This stage is crucial. Too hot, and the pieces warp or collapse. Too cool, and the glazes stay dull and lifeless. Somewhere around the 3rd hour of your shift, something shifts in the fire. An odd flicker, a strange hiss. You lean closer and notice a faint crackling, almost like whispering. The kiln is speaking. You glance at Leon. You hear that she listens, nods slowly, means it's almost ready. Almost, yeah. The part where it gets angry, right. This is the final rise. The temperature is pushed to the highest point, sealing in glazes, hardening the forms, locking the magic in place. It's the part where potters cross their fingers, pray to their ancestors, and occasionally bribe the kiln gods with a bit of wine or meat. You've never bribed a kiln before. You consider it now. You grab the tiny rice wine gourd, hidden in your tool pouch, technically for drinking, but this qualifies as spiritual warfare. You pour a splash near the firebox, watching it hiss and disappear. Leon raises an eyebrow, really desperate, fair. As the fire climbs to its final crescendo, the air pulses with intensity. You swear you can feel your heartbeat sinking with the flicker of the flames. Your eyes sting, your hair smells like smoked carp, and your fingers twitch even when still. But you're close, so close. Historians still argue whether dragon kilns were designed to be this temperamental, or if ancient potters were just gluttons for punishment. Either way, there's a strange pride in enduring it, like being part of a secret society that meets in soot and silence. You lean your head back and stare at the sky. The stars are out in full now, a tapestry of soft silver woven across black velvet. You trace constellations with your eyes. That one looks like a bowl. That one, like the tea jar that exploded last spring. That one might be a rooster. Leon has drifted off slightly, her head bobbing like a lotus in a pond. You nudge her gently, and she mutters something about glaze goblins before sitting upright again. Sleep is dangerous near the kiln. The fire can flare or dip, and a moment's inattention can undo a week's work. You feed in the last logs for the night and seal the stoking door. The kiln's body glows faintly orange at its seams, breathing like something alive. Done. You sit back utterly spent. Every part of you aches, neck, back, even your eyelids. The fire will begin to cool now slowly over the next day or two. Nothing left to do but wait and hope. There's a quiet sense of finality, like closing a letter before sending it to someone you'll never meet. The kiln holds your thoughts, now translated into glaze and curve and fire. You lie down on the grass near the kiln, still warm from its breath. Leon curls up beside you, her sleeve covering her eyes. G's soft snores echo from the workshop like a ceremonial chant. You feel oddly peaceful. A bowl is never just a bowl. It's a memory, a mistake, a miracle, sometimes all three. And now the waiting begins. Morning arrives like a wet sponge to the face. You wake up stiff, slightly damp from the dew, and deeply confused as to why your pillow is a kiln brick. Leon is still asleep beside you, one sandal half off a chicken, pecking suspiciously near her elbow. The fire is out. The kiln is sealed. The waiting has officially begun. This is the worst part of the process. You stretch, wince, and rub the soot from your eyes. Your entire body smells like a smoked duck, and your spine makes a sound like dry twigs snapping in a cold wind. The kiln will need at least 2 days to cool before you can open it. 2 days of speculation, pacing, and inventing increasingly absurd worst-case scenarios. G emerges from the workshop like a mossy rock that learned to walk. No explosions, none yet. He grunts. Give it time. Breakfast is a shared bowl of congee and silence. Even the birds seem to understand that post-firing day is sacred in its stillness. You sip the warm rice broth, slowly letting it untangle your nerves, one spoonful at a time. Leon speaks first. Think the green glaze jar survived. You shake your head. It had opinions. Most of our pots do. She's not wrong. Some bowls practically shape themselves willing participants in your artistry. Others resist you at every turn, warping in the fire, cracking on the shelf, developing mysterious blisters that no amount of glaze alchemy can explain. You spend the day doing everything except pottery. You clean tools that don't need cleaning. You sweep corners that have never known dust. You organize your glaze jars by shade, then by thickness, then back again. Anything to keep your hands busy and your thoughts from chewing holes in your stomach. At one point, G calls you over. Tell me about your worst bowl. You pause. The one with 3 handles. He nods solemnly. A teacup should never require a map. You smile. You made a vase once so heavy the table collapsed. Called it the Emperor's Regret. You both laugh for a full minute, then lapse into a comfortable silence again. G surprises you with a story. When I was your age, I fired a batch for a wedding, 60 rice bowls, all with matching lids. Thought I was a genius. Kiln misfired. Every single one warped like a drunk pig's snout. You blink. What did you do? Sold them as incense holders. People said they were poetic. You file that away for future use. Later that afternoon, the magistrate's assistant shows up. He's sweating through his official robes and clearly hasn't walked this far from the village square in years. He bows stiffly. Ahem. Potters. G doesn't bow. You lost? The assistant clears his throat. His Excellence requests confirmation that the trade order is underway. Tell His Excellence we're ahead of schedule and behind on sleep. The assistant doesn't know what to do with that. He nods, scribbles on his parchment, and flees back down the path, swatting at mosquitoes with all the grace of a flailing goose. You eye the sealed kiln once more. The outer bricks are cool now, not cold, but close. Inside, your pots are still baking gently in their ceramic dreams. There's no way to check until you open the door, and there's no way to know what's happened inside until you do. Historians still argue whether ancient potters used thermocouples or just gut instinct to monitor their firings. You suspect it was mostly guesswork, confidence, and fear. A glorious trifecta. That evening, you take a long walk by the river just to escape the gravity of the kiln. The water is smooth, dark, and slow. A few ducks glide past like philosophical thoughts. You pick up a flat stone and skip it once, twice, then it sinks as expected. Back at the workshop, Leon is humming again, brushing dried glaze flakes off a shelf. She looks up. What if everything cracked? You pause. Then we make more. She considers that. What if everything's perfect? You shrug. Then we pretend it was planned. The stars return overhead, glowing softly above the sleeping kiln. You lie back on a mat and stare upward, hands behind your head, counting bowls instead of sheep. G's voice floats through the darkness. Don't dream about firing. It gives you nightmares, but you do anyway. You dream of a kiln that whispers riddles, bowls that float in midair, and a glaze that turns everything it touches to gold and then to dust. When you wake, the air is cool, and the kiln is almost silent. Almost. Just one more day. The final day of waiting stretches longer than silk from a court weaver's loom. You wake before dawn again, not because anyone asked you to, but because the suspense has wedged itself into your chest like a misplaced shard. You stumble out of bed, check the kiln still sealed, sniff the air still faintly smoky, and stare at it like a lover returning from war, hopeful, suspicious, and unsure whether to offer food or criticism. Leon joins you a short while later, arms folded, hair wild from sleep. She says nothing, just stands beside you. The two of you gaze at the kiln like priests awaiting an oracle. Master Ji eventually appears carrying a bamboo pole he doesn't need and using it like a scepter. Today he declares, "We break the seal." You nod solemnly, Lian whispers finally. But it's not quite yet. Not until the bricks are cool to the touch. Not until the hiss of trapped heat is completely gone. Not until Ji gives that subtle nod that says, "Fine. Let's see if fate hates us today." You spend the morning like condemned souls pacing organizing tools pretending to eat. Your breakfast rice sits untouched. Even the rooster seems to sense the tension and crows only once politely. Finally, Ji touches the kiln wall with the back of his hand, closes his eyes, and says, "Now." You spring into action like your feet have minds of their own. Lian grabs the water jar in case anything inside is still hot. You grab the wide chisel and begin tapping at the sealed bricks of the kiln mouth. Gently, always gently. One crack, then another. Dust billows as ancient air escapes. The first brick comes free, then the second. Then you peel away the clay slips, sealing the gap, and like a curtain parting, the kiln reveals its secrets. Inside, silence. Then the glint of glaze. Your heart skips. The pieces are cool to the touch. One by one, you and Leon begin pulling them out, setting them on padded mats with the care of handling newborn fox pups. And miracle of miracles, most are intact. One rice jar has a hairline crack near the base. A teacup has fused ever so slightly to the shelf, but you can chip it free. The rest, beautiful. The green glaze jar, the one you thought would betray you, shimmers like sea glass in morning light. Leanne gasps. You lift it, slowly turning it in your hands. The surface has a faint crackle pattern, tiny spider webs of crazing beneath the glaze, but that only adds to its charm. It looks like it was pulled from a sunken palace. G squints at it, not hideous. You beam. That's his version of fainting from pride. Piece after piece comes out of the kiln. Bowls with tight, clean curves. Plates with even rims and luminous glaze. A couple of your experimental pieces, yes. Even the one with the combed spiral texture have survived intact, better than intact, glorious. You're halfway through when Leon shrieks, holding up a vase with a huge bloated bubble on its neck. G inspects it. It's hideous. "I like it," Leon grins. "Looks like it's inhaling a secret." You laugh. A tragic secret. G sets it down. Sell it to someone with no taste. That's most people. By the time the kiln is empty, the courtyard is full of gleaming, strange, beautiful wares. Some are perfect. Some are flawed in ways that only add to their story. A few are beyond hope, but that's pottery for you. Success and failure stacked side by side, cooling together like old friends. You collapse beside the pile, wiping sweat and soot from your brow. I can't feel my arms. Leon flexes theatrically. Pain is weakness leaving the wrists. Pain is a reminder that we chose the wrong profession, you mutter. G crouches nearby, choosing 3 pieces without comment, 2 bowls and a plate, and tucks them under his robe. "Where are you going with those?" Leon asks. "Temple," he says, "offerings." You and Leon exchange glances. To the kiln gods, to the ancestors, and to that one monk who helped me avoid taxes once. You chuckle but feel a quiet sense of gratitude. Pottery might be your trade, but there's a deeper rhythm here: ritual, honor, reverence for fire and earth, and all the strange, fragile things you shape between them. You spend the rest of the afternoon sanding bases, wrapping pieces in cloth, preparing for market. The good bowls get tied with red string. The ones with minor flaws get blue. The hideous but charming ones yellow string. It's a code. Your code. Historians still debate whether ancient potters categorized their wares this way. Probably not, but your system works, and customers like colors. As the sun begins to set, you sit beside the green glazed jar, turning it slowly in the fading light. Its surface glows like a dragon's eye. You know exactly who will buy it, a silk merchant with too much silver and a fondness for pretty things. Leon joins you, carrying a lopsided bowl. This one's mine. I'm keeping it. You squint at it. Why? She grins. It looks like me. Sturdy. Slightly off. Full of potential. You nod. Perfect. And as twilight settles, you sit there side by side, surrounded by the echo of fire, the scent of clay, and the quiet flickering pride of having survived another kiln. It's market day, which means chaos wrapped in noise, tied up with a bit of sweating. You're up before the sun again, somehow impossibly still sore from kiln duty. Your arms feel like rice noodles, and your legs have the energy of overcooked cabbage. But the cart's packed, the wares are wrapped in linen and straw, and the mule affectionately named Dumpling is grumpy but compliant. Leon walks beside you, balancing a basket of bowls on her hip with practiced grace. Try not to flirt with any merchants this time, she mutters. You scoff. He was haggling, with charisma. That man was 70, with 3 teeth. And surprisingly persuasive Master G doesn't accompany you anymore. Market days are for the young and foolish, as he puts it. Instead, he stays behind nursing tea, staring at the kiln like it owes him money. The road to the village winds through a bamboo grove past a small shrine and down a slope that turns treacherous when it rains. Today the path is dry, the sky bright, and the world is humming. You pass other villagers headed the same way, farmers, with baskets of spring onions, a woman with ducks tied by the feet, and a man carrying what looks suspiciously like homemade liquor in a painted jug labeled not wine. The market square bursts into view like a noisy festival. Stalls line every edge of the courtyard, canopies of silk and oilcloth flapping in the breeze. Merchants call out their prices. Children dart between booths, laughing and nearly knocking over baskets of eggs. There's a man loudly trying to sell miracle fish sauce, and another playing a 2-string fiddle in what could be either joy or protest. You and Leon set up your booth near the central well-primed location, just between the tofu seller and the calligraphy woman who paints horoscopes on fans. The bowls are unwrapped, the jars are arranged. The green glazed jar takes center stage, perched on a folded cloth, like it's waiting to receive a medal. And then the games begin. The first customers are always the pickers. People who want to find the one pot with a flaw and offer a price so low it makes your ancestors stir. A man in a wide straw hat pokes at a rice bowl and grunts 50 coins. You smile sweetly. 50 coins wouldn't cover the clay. He grunts again and wanders off to haggle with the tofu seller instead. Then come the curious people who don't plan to buy but will ask 10 questions per item. What is this shape called? Does this glaze contain ox blood? Could I grow a turnip in it? You answer with the patience of a mountain and the charm of someone who didn't spend all week inhaling kiln smoke. Finally, the real buyers appear. A silk merchant with soft hands and loud jewelry eyes the green glazed jar. She picks it up, turns it slowly, and raises an eyebrow. Where was this fired? She asks. Private studio, hill kiln, 2 days slow cooling. She nods impressed. It sings. You blink. It sings. She grins. Good pots do. You can feel the hum. You make a mental note to use that line in the future. She pays full price without flinching. Leon nearly drops a bowl in surprise. After that business picks up, 2 bowls go to a traveling monk who says they match the color of enlightenment. A farmer buys 3 jars to keep the rats out, which you take as a compliment. A child tries to trade a frog for a chipped saucer. You politely decline, though it is a very confident frog. Lunchtime comes with a break noodles and scallion broth eaten on upturned crates. You and Leon toast with teacups you forgot to sell, clinking them gently like nobles at court. Best market yet, she says. Don't jinx it. I already jinxed it by saying that, didn't I? As if on cue a goat tries to eat your price sign. You spend the rest of the afternoon alternating between customer charm and subtle security measures. A man with suspicious sleeves lingers near the display too long. Leon glares at him until he backs away, muttering something about glaze envy. As the sun begins to lower, your cart is half empty, your coin purse is heavy, and your feet are plotting a rebellion. The last sale of the day is to a scholar with ink-stained fingers and a dreamy expression. He picks up a bowl and sighs. This reminds me of a poem. Which one, you ask? I haven't written it yet. He pays double. You pack the cart slowly, savoring the stillness that follows the storm. Leon counts coins while chewing on a plum. The tofu seller waves goodbye, and the horoscope woman hands you a fan that says good fortune favors cracked pots. You're not sure if that's a compliment. The walk back is quiet. Dumpling trudges along. The sky turns the color of kiln embers, soft and gold with streaks of purple. You think of the bowls now sitting in someone's home on tables and hands, waiting to be filled with rice or tea or meaning. Historians still argue whether hand potters understood the full social power of their wares. But you know, a bowl isn't just something to eat from, it's a vessel for memory ritual comfort. And today your bowls found new homes. Not bad for a life spent spinning mud into meaning. The workshop is quiet when you return, eerily so. The walk back from the market has drained what little energy remained in your ankles. Dumpling the mule has been paid in carrots and is already snoozing in the shade. Leon collapses near the water jar and splashes her face dramatically. If anyone asks me to carry one more rice jar, I will become a monk. You nod, too tired to joke. But Master G is nowhere in sight, which is suspicious. He usually waits on the steps like an emperor to inspect the day's earnings and point out which pieces were overpriced, underglazed, or confusing in their energy. You find him eventually crouched over a large mixing vat, peering into it with the intensity of someone reading tea leaves. You're back, he says without turning. Sold most of it. Green glaze jars gone. He sniffs. Should have charged more. Noted. You glance at the vat. What are you making? He gestures to a row of small linen bags lined up beside the basin. Ashes, crushed minerals, dried herbs, something that might be moss. It smells like old coins and vinegar. Color, he mutters. New glaze. Ah, the sacred madness. Glaze experimentation is not for the faint of heart. It's more chemistry than art and more witchcraft than chemistry. You've seen beautiful ideas turn into cracked puddles. You've also seen disasters bloom into accidental masterpieces. Glazes are wild beasts seduced, never tamed. G stirs the vat slowly with a carved paddle. Used to be a northern recipe, he says. Traded for it near Changjian. Lost the notes. I'm going by smell. That's comforting. He dips his finger in and wipes a bit of the slurry onto a test shard. Too pale. Needs bloodstone. You blink. Bloodstone, relax. It's a rock. Probably. Liam peers over your shoulder. Looks like soup for ghosts. G sighs. Ghosts have excellent taste. The next few days become a strange blend of routine and alchemy. You help mix and test different glaze combinations, copper ash with pine soot, snail shell powder, with fermented rice. Some smell like roasted mushrooms, others like a broken promise. All of them are unpredictable. You set up a testing board behind the kiln flat tiles coated with samples of each blend, marked with symbols. Only G understands. You'll fire them in the next round, hoping to capture anything new. Glazes in the Han Dynasty were evolving quickly. Historians note the rise of celadon during this era, especially in the southern kilns, with that signature pale green that danced between earth and sky. Some scholars think it was designed to mimic jade. Others think it was simply an accident that everyone agreed to pretend was intentional. You've always loved glaze work. Clay is steady, predictable in its rebellion. But glaze is poetry in flux. The fire decides how it ends. You just suggest the opening line. Leon attempts her own batch, something purple made with crushed plum pits, and a mineral she insists she saw in a dream. You raise your eyebrows. She shrugs. G said to think like a fire. You keep track of every mix in a notebook, each ratio, each result, each curse muttered when it goes wrong. Your hands are stained with minerals now. Your tunic smells like vinegar and damp stone. Your dreams are turning technicolor. One evening, G invites you to watch an old plate he keeps in his chest. It's simple a dish with a pale green glaze that shifts toward blue in the light. Fired this in a winter kiln, he murmurs. The flame licked it just right. You hold it carefully. It's thin, too thin for regular use. Decorative, but not showy. It feels calm, like something that belonged to someone who didn't talk much but saw everything. G nods slowly. You won't get that color on purpose. You get it when you stop trying so hard. That's very unhelpful advice. Exactly. You laugh, setting the dish down gently. He watches you for a moment, then says something that lands quietly in the air between you. Your hands have changed. You look down. Calloused, strong, etched with white scars from burns and nicks. Hands that used to tremble, now steady without thought. Hands that can feel a lip too thick before your eyes even notice. Good, G adds, already turning away. The clay listens more to hands than mouths. That night you sit in the courtyard with a test tile in your lap, brushing it with the newest mix, a murky blend of copper dust and tree ash. It looks like mud, but it might turn into a river. The moon hangs low, heavy and amber. You think about all the bowls you've made, the ones still in kitchens, the ones buried with the dead, the ones shattered in transport, their shards, lining chicken coops or temple paths. All of them real, all of them mattering in some way. And tomorrow you fire again. Kiln days sneak up on you even when you see them coming. You thought you'd have more time to prepare, but suddenly it's morning, the test tiles are dry, and G's already barking orders like a general with a very particular army. No stacking the new glazes near each other. I won't have another chemical romance exploding in my kiln. You and Leon groan in unison, but obey. Today's firing is smaller, just a test batch, plus a few commissioned pieces that need to be ready for the Lantern Festival. You load with extra care, each tile marked with a little strip of parchment tied to a nearby handle or bowl foot. Re-insists on old characters ones no one has used since Emperor Wu was in diapers. You comply even though Leon has started making up meanings for them. This one means surprising fart, she says as she ties one on. You don't question her. You're too focused on balanced spacing the bowls so the heat can flow freely, but not too freely. The green glaze test goes near the middle. Leon's purple plum dream concoction goes up top where the heat is wild and whimsical. G watches everything with his arms crossed, offering commentary like a sommelier who drinks out of soup ladles. Too close, too high, not enough respect for the gods of fire. You adjust. He grunts approval. That's the closest you'll get to praise today. By mid-morning, the kiln is sealed and the fire is crackling. You stoke it with pine, letting the flame creep along the floor and up the flue. The fire dances. The tiles are quiet. Inside, a war of chemistry and temperature has begun. Copper oxidizing feldspar, melting ash, drifting across bowls like a snowstorm of possibility. You take first watch. The wind today is soft, blowing smoke in lazy tendrils across the courtyard. You sit beside the kiln and let your mind drift. Sometimes you think the fire listens when you're not trying so hard. Sometimes it feels like an argument, other times like a lullaby. The heat grows steadily. Your cheeks flush. You sip tea that's more steam than flavor, and try not to pass out from boredom and intensity colliding in your brain. G joins you eventually, holding a fan. He doesn't use just waves for dramatic effect. You know, he says, the first time I got Celadon right, I was hungover and in love. You blink. You were in love. He glares. Briefly. She had opinions about bowl height. It didn't last. You try to imagine young G, all passion and glaze, handing a woman a rice jar as a declaration of affection. It's surprisingly easy. The kiln hisses and groans. Somewhere inside, the purple glaze is deciding whether it wants to exist or not. Historians still debate whether Han glazes were intentional or accidental. Some say potters knew their minerals inside and out. Others say they threw everything into the fire and wrote poems about the survivors. You suspect the truth is both and neither. It depends on the day, the air, the type of wood, the number of goats that sneezed nearby. Fire is a chaotic editor. By the time Leanne takes over your shift, you're delirious from heat and poetry. You lie on your back in the shade, staring up at the sky, wondering if the clouds are judging you. They probably are. When the kiln is sealed for cooling, the same old ache creeps into your chest. Hope, dread, expectation. This isn't just a test. This is your curiosity made real. And the fire either rewards or punishes curiosity. Over the next day and a half, you try to distract yourself with other tasks. Repairing shelves, grinding pigment, attempting and failing to chase off a very determined chicken who has decided the glaze shelf is her nesting spot. Finally, the bricks cool. G gives the nod. You unseal the kiln mouth like peeling back the curtain on a play you don't remember rehearsing. The tiles come out first. Yours are glorious. The green glaze has deepened, taken on a depth like pond water in moonlight. One tile even has a streak of blue running through the center, as if the fire paused mid-breath and left a fingerprint. Leanne gasps as hers emerge. Not purple, not exactly. More like violet struck by lightning. Subtle streaks, a sort of iridescence. G takes one, holds it to the light, and squints. Looks like a bruise, he mutters. A beautiful one. She beams. I'm naming it Royal Mistake. He doesn't object. The rest of the batch is mixed, some pieces cracked, others underfired. But the glazes are alive. You've captured something rare, not just color, but feeling. You arrange the tiles on a display board near the entrance. Visitors come. Curious potters, passing merchants, even a few scholars. They touch the tiles like they're relics. One man offers 10 coins for a test shard. G shoos him away like a mosquito. These aren't for sale, he growls. They're for history. You grin. History, after all, is just stories that fired well. And today you've added your line to the tale. Tonight you draw the short stick night watch by the kiln again. Except this time the fire's out. The wares are cooling and your only job is to guard them until morning. You're not sure whether you're supposed to be protecting them from thieves' animals or vengeful glaze spirits, but G insists on tradition. Nothing good happens when the kiln sleeps unwatched, he said earlier, while sipping tea made entirely of bitterness and smugness. So here you are wrapped in a woven blanket, seated on a creaky stool, staring at the sealed kiln while the stars blink overhead like curious gods. Leanne had the good sense to fake a cough earlier and vanish to bed. At least the night is beautiful. The moon's a lazy smile, casting soft silver across the courtyard. Crickets hum like they're tuning tiny instruments. Bamboo leaves rustle gently, and somewhere an owl offers unsolicited commentary. You sip barley tea from a chipped cup, one of your first ever made. It wobbles a bit, but it holds warmth, which is all anyone can really ask for from pottery or life. You begin to doze. Then a sound soft like someone shuffling sand. You sit up straight, instantly alert. The shadows don't move. The kiln doesn't groan. You listen. Nothing. Maybe it was a raccoon dog. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was the kiln whispering again. It does that sometimes. You remember the first time you noticed it months ago. You'd been half asleep and the fire had just gone dark. And there it was, a faint rustling like someone turning pages inside the kiln's belly. Z says it's the glaze cooling, settling into its new shape. Clay dreams, he calls them. You like that. Clay dreams. Still, you toss another stick on the nearby fire pit, not the kiln itself, just a small comfort fire to keep yourself warm. The orange glow flickers against the wall, casting long shadows across your tools, your shelves, and your thoughts. You pick up a half-finished bowl you've been trimming. The rim is uneven, but the base has promise. You start carving by firelight, letting your fingers guide the blade muscle memory taking over. It's like writing a letter in a language only your hands understand. Halfway through, you pause and think, why do I keep doing this? Not out of necessity. You could have become a farmer, a weaver, a fishmonger. Those jobs make sense. But potting is stubborn work. You fight the earth bargain with fire, then sell your victories for pocket change and bruises. And yet here you are, because somewhere along the way, shaping clay began to shape you. Historians still argue whether Han potters were artisans or laborers. The truth is, you're both. You make bowls to hold rice and jars to hold prayers. You use earth, water, air, and fire not to impress emperors, but to make the everyday feel just a little more beautiful. You scratch your mark into the base of the new bowl, a tiny swirl, followed by a diagonal line. It's nothing grand, but it's yours. One day someone might find this bowl buried in mud and wonder who made it. Maybe they'll imagine a serious scholar, maybe a monk. They'll never guess it was just you sitting cross-legged by a kiln, hoping the glaze wouldn't bubble this time. You set the bowl down gently and look up. The fire's almost out. The stars are still bright. Then another sound. This time, it's real. Soft footsteps. You rise, grabbing a wooden ladle as an improvised weapon because why not go down swinging with kitchenware? But it's just a traveler, a young woman with a straw pack and calloused feet clearly worn from a long road. She stops just outside the workshop gate. Is this the G kiln? She asks, voice hoarse. You nod. Sort of. It's more of a G shouts while others make the pots kiln. She smiles faintly. I've come from the east, My teacher said if I wanted to learn fire, I had to see your glazes. You blink. You're a potter. She shrugs, trying to be. You look her over, dusty, tired, but carrying a wrapped bundle that clearly holds clay tools. Brave or foolish? Possibly both, like most of us. Well, you say, gesturing to the stool beside you. You're just in time for a long night of staring at sealed bricks. She sits grateful. What are we listening for? You pause. The glaze dreams. She tilts her head. Does that mean anything? Not yet, you say. But give it time. The two of you sit in silence, watching the kiln glow faintly under moonlight. You pass her your chipped cup of barley tea. She doesn't ask whose it was. She just drinks. And in that quiet moment, with the fire low and your fingers stained and the stars stretching on forever, you realize something. You're no longer the apprentice by the wheel. You're the one people are walking across provinces to learn from. Not bad for a kid who once confused glaze powder with rice flour. Morning doesn't so much arrive as it creeps slow, gold-flecked and achy. The kiln is cool now, truly cool. You check the outer bricks with your palm and feel only the soft warmth of sunlit clay. Beside you, the traveler-turned-guest is still asleep, using her tool roll as a pillow. Her breathing is steady. There's a smudge of glaze powder on her cheek. You decide not to wake her. She earned the nap. Ji appears behind you like a spirit of sarcasm and soot. Found a stray, you nod. She came looking for the fire. He squints. Hope she doesn't mind sweeping floors. That's half the job. You start to open the kiln. It's a quiet ritual, removing the bricks gently one by one. You keep your movements slow, ceremonial. You don't talk. You barely breathe. Ji helps without comment, and together you peel back the clay seal like unwrapping something sacred. Inside, the fire's secrets are ready to be revealed. The test tiles go first. Yours, green-gray with hints of soft blue under the ash glaze, have survived beautifully. Subtle watery depth like dawn reflected in a rice bowl. Leanne's royal mistake is even better this time. Deeper, richer, almost glowing from within. She arrives mid-unloading, breathless from running and still chewing a dumpling. How'd it come out? You hand her the tile. She stares, mouth full, eyes wide. It looks like thunder. Z grunts, more like bruised ambition, but it sells. The rest of the batch is strong jars with smooth finishes, teacups with whisper-thin lips. Even a lidded pot you almost gave up on has emerged like a champion from the flames. A few cracks, of course. One over-fired base, a bowl that melted slightly into the shelf. But overall success. You hold one of your better pieces up to the morning light, a wide plate with a swirl of copper glaze along the edge. The fire kissed it just right. There's even a hint of green, where it pooled soft as moss on stone. Good, G says, glancing at it briefly. Almost makes up for the disaster 2 months ago. You smirk. The one where the shelves collapsed? No, the one where your trimming looked like goat hooves. You gently cradle the plate like a wounded animal. Still sold it. Pity sale. You both know he's proud. That's as close as he'll ever come to admitting it. The young traveler finally stirs, blinking awake at the kiln's mouth. Her eyes land on the tiles drying in the sun, and her mouth opens slightly in awe. You made those, she asks. You hesitate. We fired them. The fire made them. G adds, and the gods didn't object this time. She stands slowly and walks over, touching one of the test tiles with reverence. I've never seen color like this. You nod. Neither have we. That's the point. Historians still debate whether hand potters experimented intentionally or stumbled into greatness through accident and repetition. But when you look at these glazes, the streaks, the pools, the wild magic frozen into form, it's clear that whatever their method, they danced with uncertainty and sometimes incredibly won. You invite the traveler to stay a while. Xi raises one eyebrow, but says nothing. Leon hands her a broom, the rite of passage. As the day unfolds, you begin preparing for the next batch. The success has fed your ambition. Maybe now you'll try that layered double glaze you've been imagining. Maybe a new foot style, maybe a large piece, risky, expensive, prone to heartbreak. You look at your hands again, stained strong, sure. These are not the hands you started with. These are the hands of someone who spent seasons whispering to mud, praying to fire, and learning what breaks and what survives. Xi notices your pause. You're thinking about making a funeral jar. You blink. That obvious, he snorts. It always starts with the look, then the sleepless nights, then the swearing. You grin. Might be worth it, might, he says. Or it might explode and send shards through your nostrils. Art is suffering. Art is unpaid suffering. That afternoon, the workshop is full of light. Bowls dry on the racks. Leon hums as she mixes glaze with mortar and pestle. The traveler watches everything eyes wide, soaking it all in. You pass her your notebook and show her the glaze test chart. She studies it carefully, running her fingers along the samples. You wrote all this, she asks. You nod. Every failure, every surprise. She looks up. Can I add mine? You don't even hesitate. Of course. She kneels beside the test board and begins marking her own symbols. Strange, slanted, probably local to her region. They're beautiful. Xi watches from his stool, sipping his tea like a smug dragon. You're going to make me retire, aren't you? He mutters. You laugh. Never. You'd haunt the kiln. I am the haunt. The sun dips low. Another day done. Another firing complete. And still the clay waits. The following morning, your workshop is a hive of movement, and not all of it invited. You're sketching a new pot form in the dirt beside the kiln, something tall and narrow with twin handles that curl like ram's horns when Leanne bursts in breathless. Visitors, she says between gasps, from Loyang. You blink. Capital, Loyang. She nods. Silk robes, sandals without mud, suspiciously clean fingernails. Definitely capital. You brush off your tunic and glance toward the path. Sure enough, a pair of finely dressed officials are standing just outside the gate, fanning themselves like they're disgusted by the very existence of humidity. Xi appears behind you, already grimacing. Don't give them tea, they'll expect silver leaf in it. The younger of the two steps forward. We represent the Ministry of Household Affairs. We've heard curious things about your glazes. Xi crosses his arms. You've been listening to nosy merchants. The official offers a forced smile. We'd like to place a commission. This phrase in your world translates roughly to, we want something beautiful, impossible, and due yesterday. They request a full tea service, 12 cups, a matching pot waste bowl, and serving tray. All glazed in that elusive river green hue with decorative edging, preferably botanical. Also a matching incense burner, and a storage jar, and possibly 2 extra sets. For the assistant's mother-in-law, you and Leon glance at each other. That's quite an order, you say, as diplomatically as possible. They respond with a scroll. It's a royal commission. Xi mutters something unprintable in 3 dialects and takes the scroll inside to check its authenticity. You already know it's real. The wax seal is unmistakable crimson with the curling dragon emblem of the imperial household. By midday, the officials are gone, but the commission remains like a lingering thundercloud. You stare at the list of requested items. 12 cups, you repeat. Lian leans over your shoulder with no warping. Matching edges, matching color, matching thickness. That's not pottery, that's sorcery. Ji, returning from the inner room, tosses a sheaf of old glaze notes on the workbench, then start enchanting. And so begins the most intense fortnight of your potting life. You revise your forms, measuring every wall with string checking for evenness, like a monk carving scripture. You throw cup after cup, discarding any that wobble, lean, or dare to be unique. Lian shapes lids for the storage jar, each one so perfectly circular that it unnerves you. Ji oversees everything with his usual commentary like a rooster with opinions about architecture. The green glaze becomes your obsession. You tweak the recipe: more ash, less copper, slightly thinner application. You adjust your firing schedule. You even change your stacking pattern inside the kiln, chasing that exact shade, not jade, not moss, but something between soft as morning light on wet leaves. You fire a test batch. Wait. Unseal. Too pale. You adjust again. Fire. Wait. Too dark. By the third batch, your palms are trembling. The traveler turned apprentice, whose name you learn is Rui, watches your pacing with quiet concern. Maybe the glaze doesn't want to be caught. You pause. What do you mean? She shrugs. Maybe it's not about controlling it. Maybe it's about understanding when to stop. Classic glaze talk. Mysterious, infuriatingly wise, and somehow exactly what you needed to hear. So you step back, stop adjusting. You return to the original ratio, but this time apply the glaze with a gentler hand. Not forceful, just a whisper. A breath of green. The next firing is brutal, long, hot, full of doubt. But when the kiln cools and the bricks are pulled away, you hold the first cup up to the light. River green, clear, deep, subtle botanical veining in the pooling near the base. Perfect. The rest of the set comes out clean. 12 cups near identical. A teapot with a strong curved spout. The waste bowl and incense burner emerge with a glossy sheen that catches the sun like polished jade. Even G is speechless for almost 6 seconds. Not a disgrace, he finally mutters, which is high praise. You polish and pack the full set into padded crates. Lian seals them with wax and cord. Rui adds a note hand-brushed in elegant characters, fired with care beneath southern skies. May your tea taste of rivers. The messenger arrives the next morning to collect them. He barely glances inside the crates. You do, though, one last time before closing the lids and watching your work leave, in the hands of a man who smells faintly of cinnamon and bureaucracy. Historians still debate how much imperial attention small rural kilns received. Some say it was rare. Others argue that emperors prized quality no matter the origin. You're inclined to believe the latter. That night you sleep like a collapsed vase. In your dreams, cups float down a green river, steaming, gently filled, not with tea but memory. You wake to applause, well, not literal applause, more like a sharp crack of bamboo against wood, followed by Master G bellowing, "Rise and shine, pot poets. We've got nobles coming." You groan and bury your face in your blanket. Lian throws a sandal at you. Rui's already brushing out her tunic, the only person in the workshop who treats unexpected chaos like a polite invitation. The news is simple and terrifying. The official who received your royal tea set loved it. So much, in fact, that he's sending an envoy to visit the kiln itself, which is a little like if someone liked your soup so much they asked to inspect your ladle, your pantry, and your general personality. G gathers everyone at the workbench like it's battle prep. We have 2 days. Sweep the floors, wipe the walls, hide the cracked bowls. If you have any sense of dignity, now's the time to fake it. Leon mutters. You think they'll want to see the latrine? Polished G growls. With camellia oil? You divide duties. Rui scrubs the kiln exterior until the bricks look mildly divine. Leon repaints the signage with crisp brushwork. You work on staging the shelves, artfully arranging finished wares to look like you always produce perfect symmetry and subtle glaze pooling. You even bring out the shelf, the one where you keep your secret successes, the rare pieces that came out better than expected and were too precious to sell. G raises an eyebrow when he sees you display them. That one thought you dropped it. I did. Then I fixed it. With what determination and lacquer. The day before the envoy's arrival, a storm rolls through the hills. Rain drums the thatched roof, turning the yard to sludge. You stare at the glazed shelves in horror, watching drops of water slide dangerously close to the cobalt samples. Rui moves quickly, setting up bamboo covers and cloth screens. You'd think the weather could behave for once. You sigh. Even the sky is nervous. Historians still argue whether high-level officials ever truly understood the lives of rural artisans. If they did, surely they wouldn't visit during monsoon season. The morning of the visit arrives bright and absurdly clear, as if the storm never happened. You've never seen the workshop so clean. G even wears his nice tunic, the one with the embroidery that he swears he accidentally spilled glaze on. It's wine, everyone knows. The envoy arrives mid-morning, carried in a lacquered palanquin, followed by a small entourage, a scribe, a soldier, and a very nervous-looking tea specialist holding a folding fan like a sword. You bow so deeply your spine complains. He steps out and looks around the workshop with the expression of someone sniffing unfamiliar incense. This is the G kiln, he asks. G snorts. It's not a statue garden if that's what you're hoping for. The envoy frowns, then turns to you. You fired the green glaze set. With help, you reply, gesturing toward Leon and Rui. He nods. It was subtle. Your stomach does a small cartwheel. Too subtle, you ask. He tilts his head. No, just enough to make people wonder how you did it. Then he smiles. A real one, not a court smile, a human one. You exhale. He spends the morning inspecting the kiln, walking the perimeter, watching a throwing demonstration. Rui shows off her trimming skills. Leanne demonstrates glazing with a confident flourish that somehow sprays a few drops on the scribe, who yelps but writes down something admiring anyway. You present a fresh set of test tiles. The envoy turns each one over, carefully studying the glaze flow, the pooling, the foot. He pauses at one, the same copper-gray experiment from last month that G called muddy enthusiasm. This one, the envoy says, could be a palace roof tile. G leans in. We don't do roofs. Yet. That afternoon, the envoy sits under the jujube tree, sipping tea from a cup you fired 2 weeks ago. The glaze has a faint ripple where the ash pooled an accident, now a feature. He runs his thumb along the rim as he sips. This, he says, slowly reminds me of the western lake at dusk. You blink. You've been to the lake, no. But this makes me feel like I have. There it is. You glance at G. He's pretending not to smile. The envoy leaves quietly, but not before commissioning a full series, 12 plates, 6 wine cups, and a ceremonial basin, all glazed in that memory color. You and your crew collapse afterward, lying on your backs in the shade, watching dragonflies swirl above the pond. Think we impressed them? Rui asks. I think we survived them, Leon replies. G grunts. They'll forget our names, but they'll remember the bowls. You close your eyes and let the warm wind brush over your face. You picture your teacup on a palace table beside silk scrolls and perfumed ink, a small voice beside great power, and somehow that feels exactly right. You've barely finished recovering from the envoy's visit when opportunity knocks again, this time literally. It's the courier from the next province over a young man whose sandals are caked in red dust and who smells faintly of sesame and stress. He bows and presents a scroll sealed in blue wax. You open it with fingers that still ache from wheelwork. It's a commission, this one, not from a noble or a court official, but a merchant collective from a river town near the Yangtze. They've seen your wares in Luoyang, and now they want their own, a full export order. Export. That word hums through your ribcage like a plucked string. Ji reads over your shoulder, then scratches his beard. They want 200 pieces. Lian chokes on her tea. Rui whispers, "Is that even possible?" You all look at the shelf where your current inventory, exactly 11 bowls and a warped rice jar, sits like a single dumpling on a banquet table. Ji naturally doesn't blink. You've got 1 month. And just like that, your life becomes a blur of mud motion and mild panic. You sketch out a production plan with Lian. How many bowls per day? How many jars per week? Firing schedules, glaze prep. You even assign different forms Rui takes on cups. Lian leads on jars, and you claim the flatware. Ji hovers, offers commentary, and only occasionally steals your lunch. You split the courtyard into zones, drying racks, trimming stations, glaze mixing pits. Rui builds a new shelving unit out of scrap wood. Lian digs a second clay pit. You bribe a local boy to carry extra firewood in exchange for broken shards he insists he'll use to make jewelry. You don't ask. The first few days go well. Then the slip bucket gets knocked over, the trimming knife disappears, and a surprise thunderstorm drenches the entire west shelf. Was this part of the plan? Rui deadpans, holding a dripping bowl like a soggy biscuit. You sigh. If the plan is chaos, yes. Still, you push forward. You rise before dawn, kneading clay with sleep-stiff arms. You throw with fingers that twitch from overuse. You eat standing up, rest in snatches, and dream in glaze recipes. There's a rhythm to it, clay, water, fire, repeat. You begin to memorize the days, not by dates, but by what's on the wheel. The day of rice bowls, the day the handles broke. The day someone set the glaze brush in the soup. Ji watches the production like a general before battle. Don't lose precision, he says often. 200 mistakes don't become art. But you're not chasing perfection. You're chasing consistency, that quiet, unglamorous mastery that makes every rim feel familiar, every weight just right. You find joy in the repetition, peace in the predictable curve of a lip. That's the secret nobody tells beginners when it's just you, the clay, and the wheel. Time disappears. Midway through the second week, disaster strikes. The second kiln, an old backup you haven't used since before Rui arrived, collapses mid-firing. There's a low rumble, a sharp crack, and then silence. You run outside to find smoke pouring sideways from a cracked flue and half a wall sagging like wet paper. Inside shards, melted shelves, ash, dozens of hours of work undone in a heartbeat. Lian sinks to the ground, head in her hands. You don't speak. You just sit beside her. Ji walks over slowly, kneels, and picks up a surviving shard. He turns it over in his hand, then tosses it behind him like it's nothing. Build another, he says. You stare. We've got 12 days. Then build fast. And so you rebuild. Not the entire kiln, just enough. A single chamber quickfire model, crudely efficient, but hot enough to get the job done. You work into the night-laying bricks, patching clay ceiling gaps with your own mixture of river sand rice, straw, and desperation. It's not pretty, but it holds. The next firing is tight, stressful, intense, but the results are usable. Not perfect, but good enough for a merchant ship. You sigh in relief as each cup emerges intact, each bowl rings clear when tapped. Historians still debate how organized the Han export pottery trade really was. Some suggest sprawling networks of official kilns. Others argue most shipments came from humble, overworked rural studios like yours. You believe the latter, because you are the latter. With only 3 days left, the final batch goes in. You pack the kiln with practiced speed. Rui performs a tiny dance before sealing the door, a ritual she claims increases success rate. You let her. At this point, why not? You fire through the night. The courier arrives the next morning grinning with impressive ignorance of what you've just survived. The wares are cooled, packed, and counted. 203. You send the extras just in case. When the cart finally rolls away creaking under its cargo, you collapse in the shade, arms, limp shirt, soaked. Leon fans herself with a shard. I never want to see another rice bowl again. Ji appears with cups of barley tea. Good. Now make 10 more for temple offerings. You stare at him. He doesn't blink. And somehow, you smile. Because even after all this, the clay is still calling. The workshop breathes again. After weeks of frantic shaping, trimming, loading, and rebuilding, there's finally space. Not just on the shelves, but in the air itself. The kind of emptiness that feels earned, like the quiet after a symphony. You walk through it slowly, hands behind your back, muscles sore but warm. The courtyard has that lazy look again. Clay buckets, half-lidded glazed jars, tilted like they're napping. Even the wheel seems relieved. Ji is nowhere to be seen. Probably asleep, probably snoring, probably cursing in his dreams. Leon and Rui have claimed the jujube tree as their throne. They sit beneath it sipping cold tea and arguing over whether plum or ginger ash makes a more poetic glaze. Plum, Rui insists. It has soul. Leon shakes her head. Ginger has bite, personality. You sit beside them and lean back against the tree. Plum tastes better. That's not what we're talking about, they say in unison. It's in this rare lull that something surprising happens. You begin to notice the details again. The fine spider lines in a cooled celadon cup. The soft give of well-aged clay between your fingers. The faint scent of pine resin near the kiln still lingering from the last firing. You realize how much beauty you overlook when you're moving too fast. So you slow down. You take 2 days to make a single bowl. Not because it's complicated, but because you can. You trim it gently, rub the base smooth with polished stone, and fire it alone, just one bowl, like a whisper to the kiln. It comes out a pale gray blue like early dawn. No crackles, no bubbles, just stillness. You give it to Rui, who stares at it for a long moment, then says, "This looks like silence." And somehow that's the best compliment you've received in years. Ji returns with a fresh bundle of firewood and a suspiciously good mood. You lazy worms rested enough. You smile. We were reflecting. Reflect faster. I want to test the new ash blend. You laugh. Already, what do you think we do here? Knit. He drops the bundle and points to a large jug sealed with wax. That's fermented pine ash from last year, mixed with a bit of goat's horn. Don't ask. You do ask. He refuses to elaborate. The next few days become a festival of experimentation. Rui tests a double-dip technique, layering ash glaze over iron oxide. Lian invents a spiral dunking method that sounds ridiculous, but produces a breathtaking swirl across the curve of a plate. You try reduction firing for the first time, less oxygen in the kiln, more mystery in the results. Xi approves. You're finally cooking with chaos. Historians still debate whether Han Dynasty potters truly understood the chemical subtleties of their glazes. But whether by science intuition or divine accident, something is always being discovered in your workshop now. At one point, a traveling monk arrives, guided by rumors of a cup that mimics moonlight. He brings nothing but a bamboo flute and a small sack of rice. He stays for 3 days. He says very little, but before he leaves, he gifts Rui a prayer bead made from polished bone and tells Lian that her glaze reminds him of snowfall on burnt wood. You're not sure if it's a compliment. Lian decides it is. The monk leaves quietly, and a few days later, a village elder brings you a commissioned ceremonial ware for the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival. You accept with calm certainty. It's strange, this feeling like you've stopped chasing and started listening. Your bowls now hold more than tea. They hold moments, moods, reflections. One customer says a particular dish reminds him of his mother's laughter. Another says a vase makes her want to write poetry. Even the failures are less harsh. You keep a shelf of almost pots with charming quirks, unexpected patterns, or mysterious freckles left by ash drift. Rui suggests selling them as personality pieces. Xi insists they're for the chickens. You begin teaching more deliberately now, not just to Rui and Lian, but to others, travelers, young locals, the curious. You show them how to wedge clay, how to read a flame's mood, how to recognize when a bowl is done, not by measurement, but by feel. One girl asks you, "When do you know it's ready?" You reply, "When it stops arguing with you." Xi overhears. Don't teach them lies. Then you answer. He thinks for a moment, then shrugs. Same answer. You don't write as much in your glazed notebook anymore, not because you've stopped learning, but because so much of it now lives in your hands. In the way your fingers move without needing to ask your brain. In the way you can feel a flaw before it even happens. One evening, as the sun lowers and the sky goes copper, Xi hands you a small cracked bowl. You recognize it instantly. It's one of your first. Still ugly, he says. You smile, but it tried hard, like most of us. He places it on the mantel in the corner of the workshop. Doesn't say why. Doesn't need to. You sit outside that night under the jujube tree, sipping barley tea from a cup that used to be a test. Rui plays a soft tune on the monk's flute. Lian sketches kiln plans in the dirt with a stick. The world feels both smaller and larger than it used to. And you, once just an apprentice with dreams made of mud, are now something more. A keeper of fire, a listener of clay, a quiet storyteller whose words are cups and bowls and jars that glow under moonlight. Autumn seeps in like glaze through bisques, slow, subtle, irreversible. The mornings are sharper now. Your breath curls in the air like incense smoke. The clay pit stiffens overnight, and you warm your hands before wedging. A flock of geese passes overhead one morning as you center a bowl, and you nearly ruin it, staring up at them. You manage to save the form, barely. Lian switches to thicker robes. Rui starts every sentence with "it's too cold to," followed by something completely avoidable. Even Xi, who claims to be immune to weather, starts carrying a fire-warmed rock in his sleeve for no reason at all. And through this slow, smoky season, the rhythm of your life continues. Clay, fire, ash, repeat. The moon festival order is complete. It travels to the temple wrapped in linen and the scent of camphor wood. You attend the ceremony yourself, standing quietly among villagers as the bowls are placed on an altar, each filled with tea fruit and flickering reflection. One elder recognizes your mark on the base and pats your shoulder. They feel like they've always belonged here. You don't know how to respond, so you just bow. Afterward, Rui asks, "Did you imagine this back when you first touched a wheel?" You shake your head. "I imagine not ruining my sleeves." Back at the workshop, things are changing in small, almost invisible ways. Rui starts adjusting the wheel herself when the strap loosens. Leon handles an entire kiln loading without needing G's eyebrow guidance. The apprentice has become a journeyman, the journeyman nearly a master. And you're learning something new too, how to let go. There's a young boy from the village who shows up every afternoon now. Doesn't say much, just watches. One day he picks up a shard from the discard pile and starts tracing shapes in the dirt. Rui notices. "You gonna teach him?" You glance over. He looks up, hopeful, curious, cautious. "Maybe." G scoffs. "Next thing you know, you'll be the old one yelling at clouds." You smile. It's a tradition. Later that week, you receive a letter from Loyang. Not a commission this time, an invitation. A guild representative has seen your recent work, your celadon experiments, your iron-dipped rim wear, even that unintentional swirling foot ring you never quite meant to repeat, and wants you to exhibit in a seasonal showcase, a traveling display, your name on a banner, your bowls in hands that usually only touch scrolls and silk. Leon nearly drops the glaze jar. Rui screams politely. G doesn't react at all. You'll need new sandals. You hold the scroll for a long time that night, under the jujube tree, staring at the neat brushwork and the heavy seal at the bottom. You picture the showcase, soft lanterns, long tables, nobles tilting your cups under flickering light, whispering, "Who made this?" And then you picture your wheel, your courtyard, the fire you know better than your own heartbeat, the clay under your fingernails always. You go inside, set the scroll down, pick up a fresh block of clay. The next morning you tell Rui she'll oversee the next batch. Leon handles the kiln plan. G doesn't say anything, but he sharpens your trimming tool and leaves it on your bench. A quiet blessing. You spend the next few weeks preparing not just for the exhibit, but for the act of leaving. Not forever, but for long enough that it matters. You fire pieces you've kept tucked away. That wide bowl with the copper rim that looks like dusk. A tea jar with a lid shaped like a curled lotus petal. A trio of cups that, when placed side by side, show the progression of ash glaze from pale silver to storm gray. And then finally, you choose the piece you'll send as your signature work. One of the first that came from the new glaze batch, a wide, shallow dish with a green so delicate it disappears at the edges. You wrap it slowly, reverently. G helps you tie the knots. "Sure you want to show that one?" he asks. "Why, it's quiet." You nod. "It says what I want to say." He snorts. "Then don't forget to say it to their faces." You leave the next morning, pack slung over your shoulder, the wrapped dish secure in a lacquered case. Rui sees you off. Leon slips a rice ball into your hand for emergencies. G stays inside, but you find a small note tucked into your sandal strap later that simply reads, "Don't fall asleep during your own success." You smile. You walk. The hills rise around you. The river glints in the distance. The road to Loyang is long, but your steps are steady, because for the first time you know exactly who you are, not just a potter, but a storyteller. and your stories are made of earth fire, patience, and glaze. Luoyang is louder than you imagine. From the moment you step through the southern gate, the city rushes at you like a current. The clang of blacksmiths, the scent of roasted chestnuts, the shouting of hawkers, the patter of hundreds of sandaled feet. Everything moves here: people, carts, dogs, rumors. You grip your case tighter, its lacquered edge worn smooth from the journey. Inside your dish, your quiet masterpiece. No cracks, no damage. Just green glaze, soft as breath, waiting to be seen. You follow the signs to the Autumn Artisans Pavilion, a sprawling covered space near the Scholars District. There's silk overhead to filter the sunlight and long wooden tables set up like scrolls unrolled across the earth. Each table holds the work of someone like you or unlike you. Potters from all corners of the empire, some with fame, some with guards. One has a personal fan bearer. You find your space, modest second row, under a canopy that smells faintly of camphor. A placard reads your name, and beneath it the characters for G Kiln. You touch the sign, gently surprised by how real it feels. You unwrap the dish, slowly, carefully, a breath held in porcelain. It catches the light. The glaze glows green with hints of silver. The surface has cooled into that soft, quiet sheen you hoped would hold. Not flashy, not bold, but deep, thoughtful. It looks like still water just before a ripple. And then you wait. Visitors come in waves. A noblewoman pauses, tilts her head, then walks away. A young man in scholar's robes picks it up, frowns, then smiles, and sets it down without a word. A pair of merchants debate whether it would match duck. You try not to hover. You try not to eavesdrop. By mid-afternoon, you're exhausted from standing smiling, pretending you're not, wondering if anyone here understands why you made what you made. Then he arrives. A tall man dressed simply in gray linen, scroll tucked under one arm. No entourage, no jewelry, just sharp eyes. He studies your dish for a long time. He doesn't touch it, just stands there breathing slowly. Then he says, "This one was made in stillness." You glance up. Yes. He looks at you, and a little grief. You pause. Also yes. He nods once, then finally lifts the piece, both hands careful, respectful. He tilts it, lets the light move across it. This glaze, it doesn't show off. It remembers. You say nothing. What is there to say? He sees it. He sets it down. "I teach at the artisan school near the palace. We'd like to invite you to guest instruct." Your stomach does a small startled loop. "Me?" He smiles. You know things most people rush past. You thank him, bowing low words, clumsy with disbelief. He gives you a sealed slip of paper and moves on, vanishing into the crowd. You sit down, finally hands trembling. Around you, the exhibit continues. People chat, laugh, argue. A young boy drops a porcelain bird and bursts into tears. No one notices that you've just had the biggest moment of your career. You walk the pavilion slowly that evening, once the guests begin to thin. The other works are dazzling: bright glazed dragons, incense towers shaped like mountains, delicate goblets with feet shaped like blossoms. Flashy, masterful, and yet you're not envious, because you see now that there is space for quiet work, for bowls that speak softly, cups that hum with memory plates that hold more than food. You return to your own table. The dish is still there, unsold, unclaimed, but not unseen. You wrap it again, gently, with reverence. The following day, you attend the palace school just to look, just to decide. The students are young, eager, covered in flecks of glaze and ego. The instructor greets you, warmly shows you a wheel that once belonged to a famous scholar potter whose works now sell for more than a horse. You run your fingers across the edge, it feels just like home. Still you hesitate. That night under the inn's lantern light you write a letter. It's to G. It says I didn't break anything. No one threw up. Someone invited me to teach. I'm coming home. Because the truth is, Loyang is magnificent, inspiring, monumental. But the fire that taught you still glows in a hill kiln. The wheel you know best still creaks under that jujube tree. And the next bowl you're meant to shape is waiting in the courtyard dust of your own workshop. So you bow your way out of the city, thank every teacher who didn't know they were teaching you, and head back down the same road that brought you here, with one more piece of glaze slick memory packed tight in your case. The journey home feels different. The road is the same rutted winding dotted with roadside vendors and occasional goats, but you are not. Your steps are slower, more deliberate. You notice the clouds more, the scent of sweet osmanthus blooming along the ridge, the way the river sighs around each bend like it's been waiting for your return. You arrive just past dusk. There's no parade, no banners, just the soft glow of lantern lights spilling from the workshop, and the familiar silhouette of G sitting by the kiln, hunched like an old pine tree in wind. He doesn't look up. You're late. You grin. You said I'd be gone a week. It's been 6 days. I meant emotionally. You drop your pack near the wheel stretch and breathe in the scent of soot glaze and rice steam. Leon appears from the rear courtyard with a bowl of noodles, thrusting it into your hands with a look that says, never do that again. Rui follows holding a bundle of test tiles. We save the good disasters for you. You eat sitting on the floor, your back against the kiln bowl cradled in your lap. G finally turns toward you, eyes scanning your face like he's counting brush strokes. Well, he asks, well, what are you still a potter? You pause. Yes. He nods once satisfied. The next day you fall back into the rhythm like you never left. The clay is cool, wet, willing. Your fingers find their memory. The wheel sings the same low hum. Leon's trimmed 6 cups before you've centered your first bowl. Rui is muttering about silica ratios and how purple still needs respect. The boy from the village high is waiting outside, clutching a lump of clay like it's a newborn chick. You invite him in. He doesn't speak, just watches as you shape a small rice bowl in 3 slow pulls. Then you hand him your stool. He stares, you nod. His hands are clumsy, awkward. The clay wobbles, collapses. He looks at you panicked. You smile. That's exactly how mine started. G walks by, glances at the mess. Worse than yours. You all laugh, even the boy. A little. You begin teaching him in the same way G taught you bad metaphors. Harsh eyebrows, slow repetition. But softer perhaps. A little more patience. A little more space for wonder. Autumn deepens. Leaves fall in slow spirals. Smoke becomes a constant. The fire is your companion again. Less of a beast now. More of an old friend who likes to test you for fun. One evening, Rui brings out a bottle of plum wine. She traded for 5 teacups and a story. You all sit around the kiln, sipping slowly, watching the night flicker. Leon raises a toast to mistakes that taught us. Rui adds to glazes that misbehave beautifully. G grumbles to apprentices who finally shut up and listen. You raise your cup to bowls that remember. Silence falls gentle and shared. You look at the people around you, the journeyman, the beginner, the reluctant sage, this odd soot-stained family built by fire and time, and you realize that the greatest thing the kiln has ever fired isn't a cup or a jar, it's you. In the days that follow, you finish the piece you started before Luo Yang, that tall, narrow jar with the curled handles. You've changed it now, made the base heavier, the neck thinner, the glaze, a mix of old and new. It holds everything you've learned and everything you're still unsure of. Ji watches you fire it. He says nothing, but later he places it on the top shelf of the shelf. That's never happened before. You try not to grin too obviously. A letter arrives near winter. The guild thanks you, says your dish is being displayed with honor. They invite you to return in spring. You fold the letter and set it aside, not because you won't go, but because spring is far off. And there's work here, clay to wedge, students to confuse, glazes to ruin and rebuild, and the wheel never stops. You wake each morning with the sun. You press your fingers into the earth. You feed the kiln. You teach a boy to center. And at night you sit under the jujube tree and dream in curves and color. You are a potter, still, again, always. Winter settles over the hills like a thick gray glaze. The mornings are quiet now, no bird song, no frogs. Just the crunch of frost underfoot and the soft clink of ice forming in the water basins. Clay stiffens in the pit overnight and must be beaten into submission by morning light. Your hands, usually fluid and sure, now ache before they move, but you work anyway. Everyone does. Lien has begun wrapping her trimming tools in rabbit fur between uses. Rui wears 2 tunics and still complains. Even Ji, ever the mountain, has taken to keeping hot stones in his sleeves and muttering, "I was not born for this nonsense," to every gust of wind. The kiln burns low this time of year, not for production but for warmth. You fire fewer pieces, smaller, simpler. You make more bowls than jars, more cups than vases. Winter is not the time for grandeur. It's for usefulness, endurance. You spend your days teaching Hai the finer points of centering clay. He's stubborn and frowns a lot, but he learns fast. His bowls still wobble, but now they wobble with intent. One morning he asks, "Why do people keep broken pieces?" You look up from the shard shelf, the little altar of accidents you've refused to throw away. Each piece cracked, warped, bubbled, but still beautiful, because not everything perfect tells the whole story. He nods like he understands. Whether he does or not doesn't matter, he will. You pass the cold days with quiet work, glaze tests, shape studies. You revisit old ideas, try new ones. Rui experiments with bone ash and nearly sets her sleeve on fire. Leon invents a snow kiln that functions more like a sad chimney, but you admire her enthusiasm. There's less pressure now. No looming commissions, no royal scrolls, just clay and breath and fire. You find yourself humming again while you throw. A tune your mother used to sing when she cooked rice. Ji notices. You're singing. That's never a good sign. You smirk. Means I'm relaxed. Means you're overdue for failure. He's not wrong. Because then, of course, it happens. The bowl, the one you loved, it cracks. Not in the kiln, not during glazing, but after firing. You're holding it, admiring the clean curve when a hairline fracture appears across the base. A soft tick like a breath breaking. You stare at it for a long time. There's no fixing it. Not really. You set it down. Lien finds you later and picks it up. It's still beautiful, she says. You nod. She sets it back on the shard shelf, right in the center. And you realize something, that crack. That's the part you'll remember. As winter deepens, so does the quiet. Nights stretch longer, days narrow. The workshop glows like a lantern against the pale chill. You sit by the kiln one evening watching embers fall like stars. And G speaks softly without sarcasm. I won't be here forever. You don't reply. He continues. The kiln, the tools, the shelf, they'll be yours. You already knew. But hearing it, it feels like a glaze settling in the fire, final, unearned, and yet somehow perfectly timed. I still feel like I know nothing you admit. G chuckles. Good. That means you're ready. Then he pats the kiln wall with the same affection most reserved for loved ones and says, she likes you. That's the highest praise you'll ever get. The new year begins without ceremony. The rooster forgets to crow. The snow comes late, but the wheel turns anyway. You wake before the sun, warm your hands, wedge your clay, and spin. One more bowl, one more story. The fire is waiting. The final bowl you make that winter is the simplest one yet. No carved foot, no signature swirl, just a steady rise from base to rim, as if the clay shaped itself while your hands merely listened. You don't glaze it in anything showy, just a thin coat of clear ash and a flick of iron at the lip. You fire it alone on a day when the wind is quiet and the kiln breathes evenly. When it emerges, the bowl is nothing special, at least to anyone else. But to you, it's a pause, a breath held between seasons, a shape made not from ambition or obligation or hope of acclaim, but from stillness, from love. You place it on the shelf in the center, no string, no mark. Let it just be. She begins staying in bed longer, says the mornings aren't worth the effort. But you notice him watching from the doorway, wrapped in a thick shawl, eyes tracking every motion. His voice grows softer, but his critiques sharper. You're trimming too fast again, he murmurs one afternoon. You nod. Slow down. He smiles barely. Later that week, you bring him a cup of barley tea in one of Rui's latest experiments. A tall cup, warm and elegant, with a glaze that swirls like storm clouds. He holds it for a long time. She's good, he says. You nod. You're better. You don't respond. You just sit beside him, both of you sipping tea in the silence of the winter afternoon, the kiln faintly crackling in the background. High finishes his first full set, 7 cups, 2 jars. One bowl that looks like it's leaning towards something invisible. He sets them on the rack with shaky pride. Leon pretends not to notice. Rui grins. G squints, raises one eyebrow and says, you'll ruin the market if you keep improving like this. High beams. And just like that, the cycle begins again. A new potter, a new fire. You mark the moment quietly. No speech, just a nod. And a shared cup of tea from one of your own pieces, the kind with a slight wobble near the base. A reminder that imperfection is a kind of signature. As spring approaches, the world begins to soften again. Trees bud. Clay loosens. Chickens resume their gossip. You prepare for another firing, but slower this time. Not out of fatigue, but reverence. You choose the pieces carefully. Not for customers. Not for display, for memory. You include one of Rui's storm-glazed jars, one of Leon's spiral-edged plates, one of High's leaning bowls, and one of yours, the quiet kind, the ones that don't shout but stay. When the fire fades and the kiln cools and the wares emerge, everything is changed. Not perfectly, not evenly, but honestly. That's all fire can offer. You spend the last days of the season repairing tools, rewriting notes, patching the crack in the shed roof with leftover glaze sacks. G no longer joins the firings. He watches from a distance, but his presence is in every movement you make, every judgment call, every gentle correction offered with a smile instead of a slap. Then one morning, you find his carving knife on your bench. You run your fingers over the handle, smooth from years of use. You don't ask. You simply begin. That evening, you sit outside beneath the jujube tree. The lantern swayed gently in the breeze. The kiln is dark, resting. The courtyard is quiet except for the faint clink of glaze jars and the murmur of Leon humming while she organizes shelves. You hold one of your bowls in your lap, nothing ornate, just a simple, strong curve, a shape that took years to find. And you think of everything this kiln has given you: burned fingers, cracked ware, lost sleep, but also laughter, patience, apprentices who became masters, clay that spoke when no one else could. You think of Ji, of Rui, of Hai, of the fire, of the silence after. Then you close your eyes and rest. The fire is out now. The tools are set aside. The wheel is still. The soft hush of the courtyard has returned, only the quiet rustle of bamboo, the distant hoot of an owl, the occasional drip of water from the eaves. You're no longer shaping bowls or brushing glaze. There's no kiln to stoke, no pots to trim. Only the weight of a warm blanket, the stillness of night, and the echo of earth and memory in your fingertips. The air carries the faintest scent of pine ash and iron, the kind of smell that lingers after something important has happened. Something quiet, something lasting. You listen, and somewhere in the cooling walls of the kiln, the last pieces settle into stillness. No more crackling, no more hiss, just sleep, like you. You feel your body grow heavy, your shoulders relax your breathing, soften your thoughts, dissolve like glaze into heat. There's nothing more to fix, nothing to finish. You've made what you needed to make. You've become who you needed to be. The story will continue in others' hands younger than yours, wheels newer than yours. But your mark is there, quiet and clear at the base of every bowl, unseen by most but real, lasting. You've shaped clay, you've shaped time, and now it's time to let go. Let the kiln rest, let the fire sleep, let yourself drift into the soft, glowing silence of dreams. End of script. Sweet dreams.